The following show is a Pod Avenue production. You are cordially invited to have dinner with the... Pull up a... and join UW Hall of Fame, the King.
It's Halloween, a special Halloween edition of Dinner with the King. I am your co-host, Glenn Moore, joined here by Mr. Jerry the King Lawler, WWE Hall of Famer, a man very familiar with monsters, and this is all about the Monsters of Memphis. This is our...
But Glenn, this is your favorite day of the year, isn't it?
This is my favorite holiday. My favorite
right, you know what?
day of the year.
It's because it's the only day of the year you can go out and look normal.
I knew this is the only day of the year I can go out without a mask on and still be scary.
You don't have to explain my jokes. Most people can get them, Glenn. But no, it is Halloween. It's great. This is awesome. We have people around dressed up here today at the restaurant, and it's all kind of, oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's not a costume on that one over there. Oh, that's scary. Hey, and as if you'll notice, Glenn, we have someone sitting at the table, and I haven't even introduced you to yet, and I'm not going to until a little later on in the show. I'm just going to let him sit there and look. He looks sort of scary, doesn't he, Glenn?
A little bit. He can wolf down some waffle fries, though, right? I mean, before we get to him.
Yes. But we're gonna talk to him later because he's a very special guest and he plays a very important part in what we're going to be talking about here today. What are we going to be talking about again? The fact that it's Halloween?
Well, it's Halloween, and Jerry, over the years in Memphis wrestling, you've had some battles with some well-known monsters, not only ones that people know about, but also some just, excellent wrestling personas, like Lord Humongous, who was played by Sid. We talked about him in the past episode. But, there's a lot of monsters that are very well known to people. We've had Freddy in Memphis wrestling. We've had Lord Darth.
Freddy Krueger.
Right.
Take off of Freddy, of course.
Yeah, Jason, who is obviously...
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, Jason Voorhees. We've had mummies. We've had, we had Lord Darth Vader wrestle. Lucifer.
Not really a monster, but still.
Still scary. I mean, people think, he's a bad guy. He's scary. Lucifer wrestled in Memphis, the Prince of Darkness.
Yes.
And we've had,
Igor. We had Igor, which was, if you remember Igor, the hunchback helper of Dr. Frankenstein.
And we had Dr. Frank.
Dr. Frank.
Wrestle. We'll talk about him in the future here. And then we had Leatherface wrestle. You had wrestled him. He set him on fire. And that was when people were talking about this episode and sending some questions in. They want to know about that match with Leatherface where he set him on fire. So we'll talk about that. So all about monsters in Memphis. But Jerry, I want to know how did the Halloween party over the weekend go at your bar and grill?
The Halloween party over the weekend went great. Lauren dressed as Dolly Parton, and she was the best Dolly Parton. She actually, to me, looked better than Dolly. She had the big wig and the little outfit and the whole works, the blonde hair, and she really looked awesome. And then, I actually put out on Twitter, what should I go as? Because I had a lot of different options, and I got a lot of suggestions. But in the end, and I thought it'll probably be the easiest. The most suggestions was for me to just go as myself, as the king. And really the cool thing was I had several people send me pictures of themselves going as me at Halloween. And there was a guy that came to the Halloween party dressed as me with a strap. I mean, I don't know where he got the outfit, but it was really good. I mean, he had the tights with the crowns on the side of the tights. He didn't have actual wrestling boots, but he had a one, like a Tarzan top strap like I wear and everything. But so that's when I went. I just went as the king, and as you can imagine, in a packed club down on Beale Street. I had to spend 99% of my night just standing there taking pictures in front of my throne with everybody that was at the club. Of course, Dolly had to take a lot of pictures too. She looked so great. It was a really fun night. We had a great crowd, and everybody had a good time.
Dolly Parton played a big role in my life.
Really? How's that?
Well, I love math, and you know about Dolly Parton fractions?
You love math.
Math. Do you know what a Dolly Parton...
Wait. When you're saying math, M-A-T-H?
M-A-T-H. Well, you know what a Dolly Parton fraction is, Jerry?
No, what?
Well, it's when, the number on top of the fraction is bigger than the bottom. It's a top-heavy fraction. Get it? Because Dolly Parton has...
So there is so in math there's such a thing as a top-heavy fraction. That's what it's called.
Like
so you've shortened it to a Dolly Parton fraction.
Yeah, that's how we remember what a Dolly Parton fraction was. So anyway, I figured I would throw that out there. People, maybe my math nerds would know about that. Maybe not you, King.
No, you're right. I was terrible at math. That was my least favorite subject. Wow. I still don't understand how I graduated because I only went, I think in the 9th grade, I took what we called it back in that day, high school math. Then from that, you went on to algebra. And then from that, you went to, I don't know what after algebra. I never even took algebra. I stopped after my high school math and somehow I thought algebra was required, but I didn't take it and then still graduated and won a scholarship.
Well, for your career, King, you only need to count to 3. That's really... That's all you need.
As high as you need to know.
That's all you need. But some topics to talk about before we get into all the monster business here on our special Halloween show. The 25th anniversary of Raw. And, of course, this is very close to you because I believe, and I'm not sure, King, I'm sure you can correct me on it, I'm sure you have the most appearances on Raw. It's almost 1,000. But you have to be involved with this 25th anniversary show, which is going to be the week before the Royal Rumble in January. I believe it's the 22nd. And it's going to be at the Barclays Center in New York, in Brooklyn, New York. They're going to have another event the same night in the Manhattan Center, which was the first episode of Monday Night Raw. They're going to have some legends there. The Undertaker's going to come back, Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash. There's going to be some wrestling there to go with the live Monday Night Raw at the Barclays Center. But 25 years, King, of Raw. You have to be involved. I'm sure you're going to get a call to come and be involved with that. Right.
Well, I'm not really sure. I would expect to be. I mean, how could they talk about 25 years of Raw without including me some sort of way? They've already called me. I know I'm going to be a part of Royal Rumble, and so this is before
in the match
Royal Rumble, right? Well, no, probably. Last year I got to call the Royal Rumble match.
Yeah, but you're going to be. I'm asking, you're going to be in the match, or you're going to be calling?
No, I'm sure I'm not going to be in the match. I'm still on that no-touch list or whatever. But I don't even know about calling the match. I just know, probably maybe the kickoff show and all that sort of stuff. But that was really cool last year to get to call the Royal Rumble match. And so, yeah, that is going to really be something. Can you imagine that Monday Night Raw has been on for 25 years now? I still remember the first shows. I remember in the Manhattan Center there and speaking of Manhattan, I'm going to be in Manhattan this coming Thursday.
Whoa, King, you can't be saying that.
I can say that I'm going to be in Manhattan.
Okay, all right.
I can't tell you what I'm going to be doing yet, but I am going to be in Manhattan Thursday.
All right.
And but yeah, I remember the days, and it was so one of the things that was amazing about it was the Manhattan Center was just it wasn't a very big venue because at the time I don't think they didn't know how successful this thing was going to become. I mean, it was at very, very early stages, just an infant being born there at the Manhattan Center. And this place was small compared to the venues, compared to like the Barclays Center or something like that. It was a very small venue. And the main thing I can remember was having to get ready for the matches and get ready for the show. In the stairwells, there was just not enough dressing rooms, and guys were dressing in every little nook and cranny, broom closets and that sort of thing to get ready for the show. But it was 25 years ago, huh? Man.
Yeah, 25 years ago, this coming January. But I mean, they want to tout that it's the longest wrestling show out there. But there are,
Here's the way you say it. It's the longest running episodic television show.
Okay, because I was going to say, like, Memphis wrestling. I'm sure Memphis wrestling had a longer run than Raw, right?
I don't know if it did or not. It just depends on if you call yeah, you know what? It went. I know the company that Jerry Jarrett and I owned went from 1977 to 1997. That was 20 years. But you're right. It was on from the. I think it started in '64 or something, like they said, or '65. Lance was telling me that they started on Channel 13. So if you talk about from 1965 to 1997, how many years is that? 65, 75,
30, 32?
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't hurt yourself counting there, Ken.
Yeah, I told you I was bad in math.
Yeah, so I mean, there's other promotions around the country that had a show last longer than Raw, but of course, we all know if it didn't happen in WWE, it didn't happen happen at all, right?
Where'd you hear that?
I think Vince said that.
I thought I said that.
Oh.
Well,
but no, 25 years of Raw, and I'm sure, hopefully, like I said, you'll be a part of that wonderful night in Brooklyn and Manhattan.
Now, is that going to be a televised event?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're going to have Raw on, obviously televised,
Okay.
which is at the Barclays Center. Then the same night, they're going to have like kind of like the house show at the Manhattan Center. So people who can't go to Raw can get tickets to the Manhattan Center and be a part of that get together. Since it was the first episode of Raw at the Manhattan Center.
Oh, I get it now. I was a little confused.
Yeah.
So there's going to be two events taking place simultaneously.
I believe so. That's the way it's worded. That's what I think.
And apparently they're bringing back some people like The Undertaker.
Yeah. Shawn Michaels is going to be there. Kevin Nash.
It's going to be huge.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So I mean, I would rather go to that than actual Raw, to be honest.
Well, listen. You know what? If you're in the New York area, let me tell you something that you can go to this weekend. Now, I'm not talking about Manhattan on Thursday, but are you ready for this? On Saturday, it's a Saturday, November the 4th, and this is taking place. I guess it's just like a big, sort of one of those convention type signing deals. Let me see, what's my problem here with this opening up for me? Yeah, Saturday, November 4th at the LaGuardia Hotel in Queens. They're bringing together a bunch of talent. Listen to this list of names that are going to be there. And you can come by, you can meet all these people, say hi, get autographs, take pictures with them and everything. First of all, of course, Jerry the King Lawler is going to be there.
Who?
Me.
Oh, okay.
Get this. Pat Patterson is going to be there.
What?
Pat Patterson is going to be there signing.
That's great.
The New Age Outlaws are going to be there.
Okay.
Here's a couple winners. Tori Wilson and Kelly Kelly.
Ooh.
Yeah. Sergeant Slaughter's going to be there. Booker T's going to be there. Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart is going to be there.
Okay.
Scott Hall. The Steiners.
What?
Yes. The Steiner brothers are going to be there. Eric Bischoff is going to be there. And who else? Shawn Michaels.
Wow, that's such a star-studded event.
No kidding. Yeah, that's this Saturday, November 4th, at the LaGuardia Hotel in Queens, New York.
I never, obviously you see Scott Steiner still make appearances and whatnot, but Rick, haven't
Not very often.
Not
You're
very
right.
often.
Not very often.
I always thought he was a better wrestler than Scott.
Oh, I think he was.
Yeah.
Scott, of course, looked, the physique and all the muscles and everything. I mean, his appearance was more impressive, a little more impressive looking than his brother Rick. So, I mean, not that Rick was like any slouch himself, but I felt that Rick was probably the better technical wrestler of the two.
Yeah, I always enjoyed the Steiner brothers, and especially Rick and Scott, especially in WCW when I first started. But yeah, that's going to be a
It's funny, I never got to be around Rick very much because, like you said, they were mostly in WCW. But later on and before, for some reason, I got to be around Scott quite a bit. And yeah, I always liked Scott Stein. Good guy.
I'm not sure what Rick.
What are we going to?
What? What?
No, I was going to say what is Rick doing now mostly? I mean, like you say, Scott's out. He's still making appearances on a regular basis, but you don't hear much from Rick.
Well,
so it'll be cool to catch up with him this Saturday.
Yeah. Well, according to his wiki page, I read somewhere that he's a gym teacher up in I think in the Atlanta area, but in 2004 he was selling insurance, and then in 2006 he was a school board member for the Cherokee County School District.
Wow.
And he was disqualified.
Well, you know what? It's funny because that's the kind of guy he always impressed me as. I mean, he was a great collegiate wrestler, and he was really into the collegiate style of wrestling. And he always seemed to me as the kind of guy that he didn't enjoy the pro wrestling as much as he did, his collegiate wrestling career. And it was just like something about it was just wasn't his cup of tea. So it doesn't surprise me a bit that when he stopped his pro wrestling career, it was almost like a disconnect. He went back to being sort of a normal person, and to be involved with colleges and schools and that sort of thing. That seems like that's right down Rick's alley,
Well, Scott is doing workout videos with using late women as weights.
Excuse me, what?
Scott Steiner put out a workout video, and basically it's him in a gym using very attractive ladies as weights. all his freaks.
I've told you I've never gone to a gym or worked out a day in my life, but now that's one workout that might work for me.
Just have a couple girls be the weights.
I'm gonna have to contact Scott about that and see how that's going.
But Scott Steiner is a manager at Shoney's down in Atlanta. He runs a Shoney's.
Scott or Rick?
Scott Steiner.
He's managing a Shoney's?
He runs a Shoney's in the Atlanta area. I'm not kidding. This is actually very, very true. So you could be at Shoney's, and if you had a problem with your meal, you can call for the manager, and here comes Scott Steiner.
Yeah. Good luck on that. Hey, I got no room to laugh. What am I laughing at? I got a barbecue restaurant and a club on Beale Street here in Memphis. So.
Yeah, but Scott Steiner. I mean, if you have him with probably his cutoff shirt, showing off his peaks, and coming over to the table and asking if you have a problem with your meal. I mean, it's kind of intimidating.
Yeah, that would be intimidating.
Yeah, so
the entire complaint department all by himself, isn't he?
Yeah, so he runs the Shoney's. So that's a big event over the weekend. But King, so the guest you have here, I noticed this big box in the corner of the restaurant. He walked in the box and closed the box, and now he's just in there now. I don't get it.
Well, what we're going to talk about, I'm going to get him out of the box here in just a little bit. Today is I brought him as a true blast from the past, because one of the I think he may, and I know he wasn't the first monster that we introduced to Memphis TV. I think the first monster was even before this guy. I think the Mummy was actually the first one that was out there ever, and I can't even take credit for being the first one to bring out the Mummy. They used the Mummy in wrestling, even in some movies down in Mexico. And Mexico was big with this. All the Mexican wrestlers at that time would wear masks, and there was one named El Santo, who became a big movie star, and most of his movies he was wrestling against or wound up fighting against these different monsters. And one of them that caught my eye, which was when El Santo was wrestling against the Mummy, and I thought, man, that'll be great. And I'd seen that the Mummy had wrestled around some different places, so we did create a Mummy to wrestle up here when I had this great Mummy mask, and we put it. Dave Ferguson, who was actually refereeing for us for this is back in when we were before it was Jerry Jarrett and I as partners. This is back when Nick Goulas owned the wrestling company, and I don't know how I convinced him. I guess I guess I convinced him through the fact that I said, the Mexico promotion was using a mummy, and it had some publicity in the wrestling magazines. And I told him, I said, I can put together a great mummy outfit. So he let me do it, and they put it on. Unfortunately, they put it on our friend Dave Ferguson, who was really had never wrestled. He was a referee, and but it almost worked out better because the Dave was just, he didn't have any good wrestling moves or anything like that. He was sort of clumsy and awkward, and it came across as that's the way that that's what you would expect from a mummy. He wasn't supposed to be a wrestler in a mask. He was supposed to be some sort of a decrepit old creature that we drug out of a casket or something. So yeah, that was our first experience with doing the mummy thing, and I was always fascinated. I guess I gotta go, and I think we've talked about this one time on the podcast before, but I was always, as a kid growing up, a huge fan of monster movies. Starting with the old Universal monsters, Frankenstein and Dracula and Creature from the Black Lagoon and Wolfman and all of those. I was a big fan of all of those things, and as a kid. And I'll tell you, this is the real backstory of my fascination with monsters and monster masks. It came about, I think you'd actually have to have one of my old books, the first book, before the book that I wrote in the WWE. A friend of mine named Jim Barham did a book on me locally here in Memphis, and he found a bunch of pictures from my childhood. And there's a picture in the book of me and my brother Larry at Halloween time. Now, Halloween on our street, when as a kid growing up, was the happiest holiday of the year, even better than Christmas, because it was like the one night back in the day. Parents were real strict. You got to go out and play after school until dark. At dark, boom, you had to be in the house, right? And doing your homework or whatever it was. You just didn't, you didn't stay outside after dark. But Halloween, of course, was that one exception. That was the night you got to go out unsupervised, you dress up and go out and roam up and down the neighborhoods. You'd get to go up and down your street and the street next behind your street, and then the street, behind your street on both sides, So you get to go 3 blocks up and down trick-or-treating without fear of your parents worrying about you getting abducted or anything. That didn't even happen back in the day, So Halloween was my favorite holiday. So unfortunately, we didn't have a whole lot of money growing up. And if anybody's ever seen the TV show, it's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and you see all of those kids, their Halloween costumes would consist of, their mom would get an old bed sheet, and drape it over your head like a ghost and cut 2 eye holes in it. And if you were real fortunate, they'd stick one of those little, at the time, I remember they cost like 15 cents, just a little plastic mask with a rubber band that went around the back of it. You'd stick that over your sheet as your Halloween costume. And so that's literally what the kind of costumes that my brother and I had. And so one year, it's trick or treat time, and my mom says, "Here, you guys, you're fixing to go trick or treat. Let me take a picture." And my brother has his little sheet draped over his head, and he had like a devil mask, a little cool, kind of scary looking devil mask over his face. And then there I was standing next to him with my little sheet draped over me, and I had, for some reason, a little like Porky Pig mask. What are you laughing at?
Yep.
Right. See, you're laughing, and that's what the other kids did too. And to make matters worse, quit laughing, Glenn. This has affected me my entire life. I'm serious. To make matters worse, my 2 next door neighbors, Chucky and Jimmy Teeters, who were the same age as my brother Larry and I, they came over and they were going to go trick-or-treating with us. And somehow, I don't know how, but their parents had bought them like these 2 real store-bought costumes. I mean, from head to toe, where they both had these big, scary looking, and if I'm not mistaken, they looked like devil masks, but big, nice ones. And then this costume that went head to toe. So we had this picture made of the 4 of us standing there, and those guys had these these really nice, scary Halloween costumes. My brother and I had these little sheets draped over us, and I had a little Porky Pig mask face on, right? And I know that was something that like stayed with me my entire life. That one moment in time, I felt so, I don't know, I felt so inferior with my little costume that later on in life, once I started working and making money and everything, I came across in the back of a Monster magazine this makeup artist named Don Post. He put out this line of really neat monster masks, and they were the latex masks that fit over your entire head, and they looked so realistic. And it was just something about that that Halloween night when I had such a bad costume in my mind that when I saw these great masks, I just had to have them. And so before you knew it, I had collected all of them. I had the Mummy, I had Frankenstein, I had the Wolfman, I had King Kong, I had all of these great monster masks. And every time I would ever see another, these things would cost $75 or $100 at the time, which was they were expensive and they were really nice. And so that's how my monster mask collection came about. And then later on in the business, once I got the opportunity to start doing some booking, I just wanted to utilize my monster mask collection and bring those characters to life. I thought, man, we're always looking for a good villain. You're always looking for a good heel, a good bad guy. And what better villains than these monsters that kids grew up watching in the movies? So that's how, as I said, we had already done the Mummy, and then the first one I wanted to bring to life, of course, was, and one of my favorite masks of all time was Frankenstein. So I'll never forget, I had a good friend named Jim Blake, and Jim and Jim wasn't in the wrestling business. He was just a good friend of mine, and he was actually in the music business, and he owned a record store, and he and I hung out, and we were both big fans of art and all of this sort of stuff. But so Jim was helping us do the wrestling program that we'd sell every week at the matches, and so he and I were hanging out together a lot. So I told him about this idea of bringing Frankenstein to life. So he and I went out and we built this wooden casket, basically just a box like this one you see standing over here beside us now, just a plywood box that we, in our minds, thought it looked like a casket. And so one day on TV, as the show got started, Lance Russell and Dave Brown were sitting out there at ringside at their desk. And the first thing in the show, here comes me and this guy that I had working as a manager, Private Buddy Diamond. We come rolling this big box out on a two-wheeler, and we set it right beside Lance's desk. And I'll never forget, Lance is like, Jerry, what the Sam Hill is this? Now, what are you doing? What is this thing you're bringing out here? What's in the box? And I said, well, I can't tell you. Just don't bother the box. And it had two padlocks on it. It had two doors, one at the top, one at the bottom, and chains around the box and everything. And so then a little bit later, we just set the box there, and it just sat. And Lance and Dave talked about it for like the next 30 minutes. Just, what in the world is in this box? I think I heard it move or something, right? So then finally, about 45 minutes into the show, I came back out. And I said, Lance, you went over the card earlier and you talked about the matches. And you said, can you read that match right there again? And Lance said, yeah, it says Tommy Gilbert versus Dr. Frank. He said, Dr. Frank, I don't know, but of course, Tommy Gilbert's been here a lot. And I said, well, Lance, inside this box is Dr. Frank. And Lance says, what? Inside the box? I said, that's right. And I said, I'm going to open this door right now, and I'm just going to let everybody get a little glimpse of Dr. Frank. And I said, well, he's going to stay in this box until Monday night. Monday night, I'm going to bring him down to the Coliseum, and I said, if there's anything left of Tommy Gilbert after I get through wrestling here today, there won't be after Dr. Frank gets through with him Monday.
Jerry Lawler, undoing one of the padlocks on it. There are two.
You read about Dr. Frank?
Yeah, I read about Dr. Frank.
Well, in this box, I got Dr. Frank.
This is Dr. Frank in here?
This is Dr. Frank, and I'm not kidding you with you. I'm not kidding. Wait till you see. He's the greatest wrestler that you're ever going to see. Now, you got the camera ready? No. I want to show you now. I can't show too much here. You see that? All right.
Oh, no wonder you keep him in there. Would you mind taking...
He's going to be in there till Monday night, and I'm going to bring this box down. I'm going to open it up. And if there's anything left of Tommy Gilbert when I get through with him today, there won't be Monday night, believe me.
So I took the key, I opened up the padlock, and I just slowly opened the door a little bit, and everybody got a great shot of, we didn't show them too much. It was just standing there motionless was this great looking Frankenstein, this big, impressive, scary looking mask. And I mean, it just looked so real, you know, and then suddenly he leaned out just a little bit so that people knew it was a real person there, you know, and I mean, little kids in the audience started screaming and stuff, and boom, we slammed the door back shut and locked it back up again. So, I mean, this was at a time when, and the great thing about Memphis wrestling was people and the fans in Memphis, they believed. I mean, you know, they believed the wrestling, and it was so good at the time that they believed that, I mean, they believed that this guy was living in this box, that I was keeping him in this box, this monster, and that we were going to show up and open him up and turn him loose on Tommy Gilbert down there Monday night at the Coliseum. So, and the cool thing is, here today, let me hang on just a second. Let me go over here and open the box up again just a second here, and if I can.
You know, I have a very uneasy feeling sitting beside anything that Lawler brings out. I'll move over this way. What in the Sam Hill is in that box, Jerry?
I want to show you. You got the key here?
All right.
Ah!
Are you able to breathe in there? Are you okay?
I could breathe a lot better than I did back in the old days.
This, Glenn, I want to introduce you to. This is Jim Blake, and Jim is my old longtime friend and associate, and Jim was the original Dr. Frank in the box at the Channel 13 TV studios there in Memphis. How does it feel to be out of the box again?
It feels good. I remember the first time you ever opened the box, all I did was just kind of, and then you'd push me back in so hard, and then slam the door on me, and I inevitably I'd get my fingers caught in between that and the door. But I still remember we also had, besides the mask.
Oh, you had a big fur thing on it.
The other day I was going through some stuff, and I found the fur that we bought.
Seriously?
That we cut out and made
the vest, like a vest. It was sort of like a poncho almost.
Well, yeah, but it was gray and spooky looking. It looked like something a Frankenstein monster would wear. And the thing I remember most about, we did this several times, and I was always in the box because somebody else was doing the matches. I'll never forget the day.
Well, before you tell that, but what you got to realize is too, that was a 90-minute long show, hour and a half live show.
Oh my goodness!
And so so we put Jim inside that box and locked him up, and then he stayed in there for nearly 2 hours. And all we did was we opened it up just one time for a few seconds during the show. But for almost 2 hours, you were stuck just standing inside that box.
Well, that was okay because there was a lot of stuff going on. The audience was, in those days, were really wild. They would hoot and holler and have all kinds of things to say. But the day I remember the most was the day that it got really silent in there. It was just you and Lance outside, and I'm in that box, and I heard y'all during a commercial talk about there's a bomb threat. And they immediately got all the audience out. And it got real quiet in there except for you and Lance talking. And I'm in that box thinking, is this box going to survive a dynamite blast?
No, trust me. That little plywood box would not have survived a dynamite blast. But what he's talking about was there was a time, this was like in the mid-'70s.
Mid-'70s.
1977.
Was it 1977?
That's
okay.
about right.
So what happened, there were some other wrestling groups in town that were trying to get a foothold. They wanted to do, we called them opposition at the time. So they would do anything to try to throw a monkey wrench into your shows or your events. And somebody came up with the idea that if they called the television station while our live show was on the air, and said, "Hey, there's a bomb planted in the TV studio somewhere." The receptionist had to take it serious, and they would then call the police, and then they would have to evacuate the entire studio, and it would really disrupt the show. All the studio audience would have to go outside until the police got there, and fire department would come in and look all around and check everything out and determine that it was just a hoax, and then they would let the people back in. But yeah, this happened one day while Jim was stuck in the box, and so the only people that didn't leave the studio was like one cameraman and me and Lance, because the show had to stay on the air, and we didn't want to acknowledge the fact that there was a bomb threat, because that would just cause copycat things to happen. So Lance and I just got out there and started talking, and we went. I just cut a long promo for the time that it took to get the people out and then to get them back into the studio. But poor Jim here was just sitting inside that box sweating. Not only were you sweating inside the box, but then you had that rubber mask on that was like crazy, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. And sweat was dripping all over me.
His head used to lose weight. He looked like Beetlejuice when you a little bitty head there at the end of the show.
Well, that was a big mask, and I tell you what, it was rubber and it was hot. But occasionally I would kind of move around in there, and the coffin would shake a little bit and whatever. And I remember Lance and Dave were always commenting about, "Oh Lord, Dr. Frank's at it again."
Yeah, that was one of the great things. Like I said, the people believed because of Lance and Dave. Lance and Dave put that box over like there really was a real monster inside there. And it came across as believable. This thing had to be padlocked, and the people could just imagine in their minds that box wasn't going to be opened until we got down to the Coliseum on Monday night. Now, like Jim said, we had all the other wrestlers wrestling actually on the TV show. So Jim was the only person that we could stick in there and stay in there for the entire 90 minutes. But when we actually did the wrestling shows, I believe it was Ken Dillinger. I think Ken Dillinger was the guy that we put in to put the outfit on and the mask on to actually wrestle at the different events. And he did a fantastic job. It was like you was watching the Universal movie Frankenstein had come to life and was all of a sudden in a wrestling ring. And I'll never forget one of the great nights. And we used Dr. Frank a lot because it got over. The people loved it. We were doing a show in not Marion, Arkansas.
Forest City?
No, farther down where.
Helena?
Yes, in Helena, Arkansas. Good memory. Dr. Frank's got a good memory from after being locked up in that box for so long. Yeah. So we were doing a show in Helena, Arkansas, and it was on a college campus, and there they didn't have I want to say arena, but it wasn't really an arena. It was more like a auditorium that had a big stage. And then all the seats went back up, and they were really a steep incline. And so it was almost like a big movie theater. All the seats went back in one direction, and they all faced down on the stage. And we would set the ring up on the stage, and the locker rooms were back off the guys would come out coming up from stage right or stage left or whatever to get into the ring. And then all the fans were off in one direction on one side of the ring. And I'll never forget, we had a sellout that night. In Helena, and it came time for Dr. Frank's match, and they turned the lights down, and suddenly this eerie music starts playing, and out his opponent was already in the ring, and out comes Dr. Frank off the side of the stage, and he's just lumbering, just slow, just like Frankenstein would walk with his arms straight out. And he's just looking up at that ring, and he's just slowly trudging towards the ring. And then all of a sudden, he just stopped. Complete stop. And slowly he turned his head to the right and looked at the audience. And all of this seemed like happening in slow motion. And that Frankenstein face is looking out at the entire audience. And then he just, with one move, just turned his body suddenly facing the audience and started trudging and walking towards the crowd. And I swear to you, it almost caused a riot. The entire audience jumped out of their seats and started heading to, and there was only one exit for this whole thing, and they all had to go up these stairs, and it was this like pandemonium just by this guy. All he did was just like make 2 or 3 steps towards the audience, and they just panicked and went out of the crowd. That's how over Dr. Frank was at that time. It was a lot of fun.
And King, you had to the monster Dr. Frank turned on you, and you had to use the old fireball to win a match against him. But you had a match with him in 1978. So yeah, Dr. Frank was around for a while.
Yeah, he was, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, when he turned on me, I believe there was a classic match. Or maybe that was a Mummy. I don't know. But there was a match where I teamed with Tojo Yamamoto against one of the Monsters, and I think maybe Sam Bass. And it was so funny. One of the great ribs. Now Tojo was just a little short Japanese wrestler, and all he was famous for was chopping and punching and that sort of thing. Well, we made the big comeback on the Monster, and I went in and I threw a drop kick, and I ran over and I tagged Tojo and I said, "Drop kick him." And Tojo's like looked at me, but the crowd was sky high, and Tojo comes in and he does this funny little thing with one leg. Just one leg would go up, and then he would fall on the ground. And he's like, kick the guy. And then he'd come over and tag me. He said, "You son of a gun." And I run back in the ring, and I threw another drop kick and knocked the Monster down again. I go back over and I tag Tojo and said, "Drop kick again." He said, "No, you son of a gun. I know drop kick." We had some great fun with the Monsters. But yeah, Dr. Frank was not, he was not the only one. The Dr. Frank was the forerunner, and he got over so good that I thought, man, I've got 10 or 12 masks. We'll try some more Monsters, and they all seem to work.
Yeah, there's a whole list of, like we said, we ran them off to begin the show. We're not going to go in depth about a lot of these, but the one that is getting the most questions asked about it when we put the tweet out there this morning was about Leatherface, and of course, Leatherface. A horror movie iconic figure when it comes to in films, but Leatherface was another one that you had some battles with, and people want to know about that match where you had to throw a fireball at him and kind of hide the fact you had to put him out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was, like you said, with Dr. Frank and with most of these Monsters, it came down to the only thing that they would respond to, especially Dr. Frank, like Frankenstein, was fire. That was the only thing Frankenstein was afraid of. So naturally, it worked out perfectly that a fireball was what you would have to use on Dr. Frank and on all the Monsters. That was like the only thing that you could get the upper hand on them with. So when it came down to Leatherface, though, and we had a great Leatherface, really good mask. And then of course, if you remember the Leatherface character, his outfit was like it was just clothes, but he had this all bloody, tattered, like apron, like a butcher's apron that he would wear when he would chop up his victims and that sort of thing. So, in working with Leatherface, he had nothing that you could really burn him with. I mean, in other words, if you threw a fireball and it just hit his clothes or anything, the fireball would it would look fantastic, sometimes bigger than others, but, it would burn out pretty quick. And if it just hit somebody's clothes, it wouldn't have the same effect as if it hit their skin or burned their hair or something like that. Well, Leatherface, he had this leather mask covering his face, and then he had all this apron and all his clothes on. So when we got ready to throw the fire on Leatherface, I can't remember if it was Jimmy Hart in my corner at that time, but I did have a corner person, and I had this little. I was always getting all of these little magic gimmicks. I would get my fire stuff at a magic store in Memphis that used to be called the Fun Shop over on Highland. You remember that, Blake? So anyway, that I would get my fire supplies there, and there would always be some other cool little magic tricks. And I remember there was one that it looked like it was actually made out of plastic, but it looked like a shiny razor blade, and then connected to the razor blade that you would hold the blade in your hand, but then connected to the back of it was this little tube, and then a bulb, a little plastic squeeze bulb, and you could fill that squeeze bulb with like this fake blood that you could buy in the fun shop. And then as you held the razor blade and like pull it across your arm or something, you would, I mean, this is this kind of stuff they would do in the movies. You would then squeeze that little bulb that's in your hand, hidden in your hand, and it would look like blood. It would actually run down, behind the blade, but it would look like the blade was slicing your hand and the blood was coming out. Well, I had that little thing. So what I did, I took that thing apart. I took the little razor blade part off of it, and I had the bulb, and we filled that bulb with lighter fluid. And so I'm almost certain it was Hart, and if it wasn't, I'm mistaken. It was somebody, whoever was in my corner that night. I said, look, here's what I'm going to do. I just said, you have this bulb in your hand. Nobody will be able to see it. And I said, at one point, I'll bring Leatherface over right before I throw the fire on him. I'll bring him over to the side of the ring. And I said, you squirt that bulb, and nobody will even know what you're doing. But I said, you squeeze that lighter fluid out onto his apron, squirt it all over the front of his apron. So I'm thinking that, when I throw the fire on him, then that lighter fluid will hopefully not have completely dried up, and it'll catch a little fire, and it'll look like, it'll burn a little longer than the regular fire would usually do. Right. So it was so great. And are you gonna put the video out there on Twitter after this somewhere today?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Glenn?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing? Are you trying to pay the check now? What are you doing, Glenn?
No,
put that down.
I'm getting the video ready for the audio.
Quit talking to the waitress while I'm trying to talk to you. Cute. Pay attention. I know she's cute, but still. Listen. So where was I? I said you're gonna put the video of this out somewhere on Twitter today, I hope. But so we squirt the lighter fluid on Leatherface's apron right during the middle of the match. And then finally he gets me over in the corner, and I think he went and got his chainsaw or something, and I'm down. And as he's got his chainsaw up over his head and he's coming towards me, I've of course got my fire ready. And just as he's about to get me, boom, I throw this big fireball. It hits right on the front of Leatherface. And apparently we didn't realize how much or how flammable that lighter fluid was going to be. But all of a sudden, Leatherface, he burst into flames. I mean, ordinarily the fire that I throw would just be this big bright flash of fire, and then it would go away, as soon as it done the quick burn. But this guy caught on fire. I mean, his robe was like really burning. I mean, his apron was like really on fire and burning. And I mean, it was not just like a little fire. It was like a big fire. And I looked at it. I mean, my eyes got big, but I looked at Leatherface's face, and his eyes were like looking at me like, oh, I'm on fire. And he starts patting his stomach, trying to put it out. And by this time, the fire goes down between his legs and is coming up his back. I mean, this guy's in like serious trouble now, right? And he starts doing this like crazy dance. I'm sure his crotch was like really, really boiling at this point. And so he's like doing this crazy dance, trying to pat himself out. And I wound up having to kick the guy so he would go down. And then I stomped him out and stomped the flames out. But it was like, I'm sure the people are sitting up there thinking, well, the king set him on fire. Now he's putting him out. What's the deal? Does he really not like this guy, or does he want to save him? What the heck happened? Oh my gosh, yeah. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, that guy that was doing Leatherface that night was Dennis Knight. If you remember, he was Midian later on in the WWE, and they worked for, did the stuff with the Undertaker as one of the what was it, acolytes or something like that.
Oh, the Ministry of Darkness.
He was also the guy that did the streak. Remember when he was the streaker?
Yeah, naked Midian.
Naked Midian, yeah, he did that. Oh my gosh! Just think about it. Set him on fire as Naked Midian.
Oh my God!
Big. Yeah,
Midian. Well, wasn't he one of the Godwin brothers too?
Yes, he was. He was Henry or Phineas, one of the Godwins.
Yeah,
he sure was.
Slop trap.
He had a lot of different personas, but I'll bet his most memorable night was as Leatherface when he got set on fire at the Coliseum.
One notable, well, still to this day. Because it's still used by the Gilbert family as Freddy Krueger Freddy making his appearance in Memphis. But I have a story when it comes to the Gilbert family and Freddy Krueger. A couple years ago, Dangerous Doug Gilbert, who was one of the Gilbert family members who have played Freddy over the years, he came up here for AIW, and it was a weekend event, so there was a show, I think, on Friday and then Saturday. So on Friday, he was in a tournament as Dangerous Doug Gilbert. He lost. And then the next night, they're going to have a match, and, obviously he's out of the tournament, so they had Freddy Krueger, and they bought Doug the mask and the claw, and they had a sweater that looked like, Freddy Krueger's sweater, but he didn't have any jeans to wear to wrestle in. The pants he had, they would probably rip if he was wrestling in the ring. So he borrowed my jeans. Luckily, I had a pair of shorts in my bag. He borrowed my pair of jeans, had to tape them up so they're kind of a little bit tight because I am a man of bigger stature here, King. So he had to tape them up, and so he went out as Freddy wearing my pants and Dangerous Doug Gilbert. But yeah, I mean,
that was a true nightmare on Elm Street, wasn't it?
But yeah, Freddy and Freddy had some, obviously matches in Memphis. I'm doing some research for the show. Do the Freddy dance. He had a music video with Freddy, and obviously music videos played a big part in Memphis wrestling back in the day. But man, I love the Jason Voorhees and Freddy making their Memphis wrestling debuts back in the day.
That was. Well, I just had a lot of fun with all those masks. Jerry Jarrett was not a big fan of that. But this always came about. If you remember, I've told you before that during our run there, Jerry would book for 6 months, and then boom, right when we'd have a date set, and then on that date, I would start booking for 6 months. And man, you could always tell when it was my turn to start booking because the Monsters and the Battle Royals would start showing up. I would book a Battle Royal every night, and then of course the Monsters were always a big part of my booking. And then as soon as Jerry started booking, boom, all that stuff stopped. No more Monsters and no more Battle Royals. So that was just our little different philosophies on booking. But I always loved the Monsters, and the more the merrier. And I'm sure for Doug Gilbert that was kind of cool because Doug's dad, Tommy Gilbert, was Dr. Frank's first opponent. So he wound up being the first guy to wrestle a monster in our Tennessee territory, and then later on became one of the monsters when we used him as Freddy Krueger. So then for Doug to get to come back and do the same gimmick or same monster that his dad had done, I'm sure that was kind of fun for him.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a ton of different monsters he used over the year. I mean, obviously at the time, Dr. Frank was one you mentioned that did very, very well. But looking back years later, King, are there some that you kind of shake your head at, like, why did I do that?
No, not really.
Anything?
Are there some that you think would be that way?
Well, I'm maybe some people who, looking back, would say, why the hell would King have this person bring out this guy or something like that. Looking back, obviously it's easy to critique 30, 40 years from the fact, but yeah, I enjoy the whole monster aspect of wrestling, especially bringing some pop culture icons in and people. Well,
as also speaking of bringing in some people, when Andy Kaufman got when Andy started wrestling after I gave him the pile driver, we went through this long run where Andy was either bringing in partners to go against me, or sometimes he put a bounty out on me for paying $5,000 to any other wrestler that could put me in the hospital. And one night we had I think we brought in some different guys for Andy, guys, Jesse Ventura, Ken Patera, some different guys, the Assassins. And then I think one night we didn't have anybody special. So we went back to my monster mask closet and got the Colossus of Death. And this big, scary looking monster mask. And Duke Myers. Big old Duke Myers. We put that mask on Duke Myers, and he was Andy Kaufman's partner in one of our matches that night. And then of course, a lot of the monster things went on to be very successful. Humongous, Lord Humongous, after the Road Warrior movie, we put that gimmick on. First, I think Mike Stark. We started out. We put it on Mike Stark, and then quickly thereafter, we put it on Big Sid, Psycho Sid, and that's how Sid, when he first started in the business, he started as Lord Humongous right here in Memphis.
And then, well,
go ahead.
Obviously, this isn't a pop culture monster, but this is one that you came up with. Kamala, which lasted for years and years, even past Memphis into the WWF. You had, Kamala is, he would come out with that mask, the mask, and looking frightful.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was a great creation and a great character and everything. But that wasn't meant to be a monster. That was the Kamala character was capitalizing on the, at the time, the president of Uganda was Idi Amin, and he was an admitted cannibal. And so that was making huge news all over the world at the time. Here's the guy that's the president of a country over in Africa, and he's a cannibal. And so we just we borrowed all the things that we could. I put together a character in James Harris that what I thought a cannibal should look like. I used some references from a painting by a friend of mine, Frank Frazetta, and I created this cannibalistic looking monster, so to speak, and simply because we were playing off of the fact that was in the news, the Ugandan giant and the president of Uganda was a cannibal. So that's how Kamala came about. He wasn't really from the monster movies influence that was on me, but
it's still scary though. I mean, you had this guy with
oh my gosh, he was scary, and the people. I was scared of him. He was, and I told him, I said, he's not supposed to be a wrestler. He's just supposed to be a cannibal. And he just came in and chopping and biting. And man, when Kamala would try to bite you, the people would go crazy. Hey, I'm just looking down. I'm looking down here at my phone, and Scott Bowden just sent out a tweet, and it reminded me from Halloween in 1995. Whenever Monday Night Raw or Halloween would fall on a Monday, Vince, at this time, we would usually dress up in some kind of way for Halloween. I'll never forget. This was a great, and there's got a good picture on here. I'm going to retweet it here in just a minute. But we would always try to come up with something funny this is when Vince McMahon and I were doing the commentary. And this was right in the midst of the time when Vince was on trial for the steroid thing, and they were really thinking that he might get sent to jail. And he would have probably if he'd lost that trial, which of course he didn't. But just to show you the kind of kahunas that Vince McMahon has, just to throw it in everybody's face, it was Halloween on a Monday night in 1995, and Vince came out on TV dressed in a convict outfit. I'm looking at him right now. He's got all the stripes. He got the hat, the whole striped outfit, and of course, I'm dressed. What do you think I'm dressed as next to him?
I believe I saw this photo somewhere, but you're going to say what you were. I'm going to be like, I knew it. What were you dressed as?
Well, I have on scrubs and a doctor's mask. I was a proctologist.
Oh, God.
I got on rubber gloves, and I'm pointing at Vince in this picture. And I got on for some reason, I got on glasses that are like 2 inches thick. It's like a nearsighted proctologist. So.
Unbelievable. Well, yeah, back to Kamala. Kim Chi, who was the Brooklyn Brawler. We all know who Kim Chi was, and they had Downtown Bruno also.
The following show is a Pod Avenue production. You are cordially invited to have dinner with the. Pull up a and join UW Hall of Fame, the King.
It's Halloween, a special Halloween edition of Dinner with the King. I am your co-host, Glenn Moore, joined here by Mr. Jerry the King Lawler, WWE Hall of Famer, a man very familiar with Monsters, and this is all about the Monsters of Memphis. This is our.
But Glenn, this is your favorite day of the year, isn't it?
This is my favorite holiday. My favorite
right, you know what?
day of the year.
It's because it's the only day of the year you can go out and look normal.
I knew this is the only day of the year I can go out without a mask on and still be scary.
You don't have to explain my jokes. Most people can get them, Glenn. But no, it is Halloween. It's great. This is awesome. We have people around dressed up here today at the restaurant, and it's all kind of. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's not a costume on that one over there.
Oh,
that's scary. Hey, and as if you'll notice, Glenn, we have someone sitting at the table, and I haven't even introduced you to yet, and I'm not going to until a little later on in the show. I'm just going to let him sit there and look. He looks sort of scary, doesn't he, Glenn?
A little bit. He can wolf down some waffle fries, though, right? I mean, before we get to him.
Yes. But we're gonna talk to him later because he's a very special guest and he plays a very important part in what we're going to be talking about here today. What are we going to be talking about again? The fact that it's Halloween?
Well, it's Halloween, and Jerry, over the years in Memphis wrestling, you've had some battles with some well-known monsters. Not only ones that people know about, but also some just excellent wrestling personas, like Lord Humongous, who was played by Sid. We talked about him in the past episode. But, there's a lot of monsters that are very well known to people. We've had Freddy in Memphis wrestling. We've had Lord Darth.
Freddy Krueger.
Right.
Take off of Freddy, of course.
Yeah, Jason, who is obviously.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, Jason Voorhees. We've had mummies. We've had, we had Lord Darth Vader wrestle. Lucifer.
Not really a monster, but still.
Still scary. I mean, people think, he's a bad guy. He's scary. Lucifer wrestled in Memphis, the Prince of Darkness.
Yes.
And we've had,
Igor. We had Igor, which was, if you remember Igor, the hunchback helper of Dr. Frankenstein.
And we had Dr. Frank.
Dr. Frank.
Wrestle. We'll talk about him in the future here. And then we had Leatherface wrestle. You had wrestle him. He set him on fire. And that was when people were talking about this episode and sending some questions in. They want to know about that match with Leatherface where he set him on fire. So we'll talk about that. So all about monsters in Memphis. But Jerry, I want to know how did the Halloween party over the weekend go at your bar and grill?
The Halloween party over the weekend went great. Lauren dressed as a doll.
For another show. That's the guy that deserves to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Is definitely Vader. I'm a huge Vader mark king. Anything that Vader does, I'll be happy. Unless he's tweeting photos of himself naked like he did a couple years ago.
Well, we
showing off a little Vader.
We don't need to see any of that. You're right.
But King, after all these gimmicks and all these characters and all these monsters, especially in 2017, if you copy anything anybody has done, you're going to get a cease and desist letter. At any time during these gimmicks and or characters, did you get any kind of pushback from the companies that actually own the rights to these certain characters?
No, because this was the company that owned the rights to most of those monsters was Universal, and of course that was out in Hollywood, California, and these were the days when TV was local. It was syndicated. We were just seen in our territory, which was Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, Kentucky, Alabama, all of that. So they probably never even heard about what was going on here with the monsters. And once again, just like in the music back in those days when we would come out to music, now everything is licensed and copyrighted and all that sort of stuff. Back in the day in the 70s and the early 80s, heck, if you came out to somebody's song, they were tickled with the fact that they were getting some publicity or getting some airplay, so to speak. Nowadays, though, you have to get permission or pay royalties and all of that sort of stuff to use music. And as we speak of this again here, you got to follow. Let me see what this guy's name is. It was Scott Bowden. We're going to have him on the show. He was a guy who grew up here in Memphis, and he actually was in the business.
He started his own podcast recently.
Yeah, he started his own podcast, and he's already asked me to be on it. And he managed for us a little bit here in Memphis as a manager. And now today he's putting out a lot of Halloween stuff. He's got a picture. He does have a great collection, probably a better collection of some of the different pictures from the past than I have. It's a great picture of Jackie Fargo flying up in the air, using a metal folding chair, hitting the mummy over the head in one of our matches from Memphis. It's so that's a great picture right there. And this is actually a picture of our first monster that we ever used in Memphis. This was even before Dr. Frank.
Before we wrap the show up, King, WCW, and I know you didn't watch WCW, so I'm just telling you, they had Chucky come on WCW on Nitro. Not on like a live, but they had like a a TV. He came on like the Titantron, and it was during one of the new Chucky movies where it was coming. I think like the Bride of Chucky or something like that. One of those Chucky movies, and they had Chucky, and it was one of the worst wrestling segments I ever watched in my life. And I think it involved Rick Steiner. I think it was just so bad having Chucky the doll, and he was doing his laugh. It was taped. It was just awful. So not all the time does bringing horror, fixtures into the wrestling scene work. Sometimes
no,
they're duds.
And you know what? As I'm looking at this picture of Jackie Fargo, I can always remember, and this is where he and I differed a lot on our philosophy in wrestling. Even though he was my mentor and I looked up to him more than anybody ever in the wrestling business, but he used to always say, in talking about a match, he used to say, funny means no money. And that was just his philosophy. He didn't think anything involving a match should ever be funny. And I was totally the opposite. I thought, funny things happening in a wrestling match was always added to the entertainment value of it. But yeah, no, Jackie was not crazy about the monsters or the mummies or all of that sort of stuff. And I promise you, I can tell from this picture that he is about to try to knock the mummy's head off because I'm sure he didn't like working with this gimmick. That was just not Jackie's cup of tea.
Unbelievable. So a lot of great monster stories for our Halloween episode of Dinner with the King. Now, King, I'm releasing this on Halloween night. So it's going to be up while kids are trick-or-treating. I'm sure some parents are going to be listening to the podcast. Now, for all our listeners in the Cleveland area, I heard there's a warning going out for these treats that are being handed out to kids. And if you're a parent, you should definitely check your child's pillowcases or buckets for these treats. You know what the warning is for, King? You're up here in Cleveland?
It's no telling.
They are handing out Browns tickets. Now, if your kid gets Browns tickets, I know it's scary. It's very frightful. If you're getting Browns tickets, make sure you get rid of those as quick as you can. You don't want your kids being succumbed to the disappointment and depression of being a Browns fan. We don't need that here up in Cleveland.
Sad is that our beloved Browns have sunk to this level. They're the joke of Halloween treats. That's sad.
Jeez, unbelievable. Well, King, I enjoyed doing this monster episode with you. We might as well say we try to get Tom Savini on the show because Tom Savini obviously is.
You're right, exactly.
So Tom Savini, obviously, everybody knows.
Tom's a master monster maker.
Oh yeah.
I had the pleasure of meeting Tom. Oh, let's see where. Of course, I was at the show. I was wrestling in Pittsburgh. And I came out of the ring, and I'm walking back, and I just looked over, and I immediately recognized him. I don't think anybody else knew who he was. He was sitting on the front row, and I just stopped, frozen, and I just looked, and I went, Tom Savini? And he looked at me like, he said, you know me? And so I said, yes, of course. And I got him, and I brought him to the back, and it was like he was surprised that somebody recognized him, but he became he was obviously always a big wrestling fan, but man, gosh, I was such a fan of Tom Savini's work and his makeup and the characters. He created, oh my gosh, so many
the Jason character, the Jason mask, and
the Jason, the one that, but he created the little kid that came up out at the end of the movie, where he came up out of the water and grabbed the girl in the boat. He did that, and then
Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, Dawn of the Dead. Just so many movies, and then of course he starred in a ton of movies too, playing as a character, playing himself. But I reached out to Tom. I thought he'd be a great guest. And I'm looking right now at the tweet or the message that he sent me, the text. I said, I was wondering if we could give you a call on my Halloween podcast and talk to you for about 10 or 15 minutes. And he said, Jerry, I'm sorry, I'd love to, but I'm going to be on a plane to England. Ooh. And and he said, and then I just sent back, I said, how to talk to you. How's everything going? And he said, yeah, it has been a while since we talked, but I'm on a whirlwind tour right now. L.A., Atlanta, Boston, England, and Germany. Wow. And he said, I've been doing a lot of things for the WWE. If you know now, Tom did the zombie makeup on Sasha and Kevin Owens, and he's been doing some masking stuff for WWE. And that all came about because I took him backstage that day when I recognized him in the audience in Pittsburgh. And he found out, there's tons of guys, Chris Jericho especially, a lot of guys really into Tom's work that he's done over the years. And the most fantastic house, you think I got a cool house when you see some of the, the memorabilia and all the neat stuff. I mean, the Batmobile, and I've got the 10-foot tall Hulk and everything. You go to Tom Savini's house in Pittsburgh, and it is like a freaking horror museum. It is amazing. It just goes on and on. He's got three stories, a basement, a regular story, and upstairs, and everything, wall to wall. Every inch of his walls are covered with some sort of monster memorabilia stuff. I mean, just the coolest things you've ever seen. I've been to his house several times, and it's like walking around once again, like the best monster museum you've ever imagined.
I met him. Well, you took me backstage to TLC in Philadelphia like 6 years ago, and Tom Savini was backstage. And I didn't really know much about Tom Savini. I knew he was involved with horror, but after Googling him after, I'm like, oh my God, I watched the WWE pay-per-view with Tom Savini, and I really had no real idea of the magnitude of what this man has done in horror. I was kicking myself in the face, literally, not being able to. Well, maybe he's happy because I would have picked his brain the whole night about horror movies.
Oh my gosh! And he's got the original. It's like you walk in his bedroom, and here's his big king size bed, and it's just like you can't even comprehend what it would be like to actually live there. I don't know how you would ever get a minute of sleep, but like at the foot of his bed, standing 8 feet tall, is the original robot Gort from The Day the Earth Stood Still, the old original movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. He owns that. One of the other coolest things that he owns, that he has, is, and I got to, I think I told you once before, like one of the coolest people I got to meet at these Comic Cons was meeting Linda Blair, the girl who played the Exorcist. Yeah. And the most famous horror movie ever, if you ask me, scariest movie I've ever seen. Well, Tom owns the bust of the Linda Blair character, where her head twists and spins all the way around. I mean, he's got that right there in his house. It's so realistic looking. It's just amazing. It's unbelievable.
Well, and that's in Pittsburgh, correct?
That's in Pittsburgh, yeah.
Well, next time you go up to Pittsburgh, Jerry, I'm gonna come here from Cleveland.
His house is the only good thing in Pittsburgh.
Jerry, people might as well. People think, sometimes you and I aren't in the same room when we record, and sometimes I let it be known that I kind of goof up, and there's actual people out there who tweet at me.
Oh, just about 3 or 4 times a show. That's all.
I just goofed up, and there's actually people who take shots during the show when I goof up, and they try to get drunk when we mess up where we're sitting. But we aren't always sitting together. Sometimes, most of the time we are, but sometimes we aren't. But when I'm in Cleveland, Jerry, and you're in Pittsburgh, I'm going to go to Tom Savini's house with you, because I think I would love that, to see all the horror memorabilia.
It's awesome.
But yeah,
it is great.
So we tried to get Tom on, but it was nice to get Dr. Frank on the show, to get your buddy Jim Blake on the show to talk about Dr. Frank. And we hope everybody enjoyed this Halloween episode And remember, if you're in Cleveland, if you get Browns tickets, or kids get Brown tickets, throw those away. Throw them away. Those are very dangerous. They can lead to.
Oh, come on.
They can lead to depression.
They were, you know what? I mean, I don't know if I've had a worse day than this past Sunday. Lauren and I, where were we Saturday night? We were out late Saturday night. We were at the club Saturday night for some reason, and then that was the big, the big dress up night Saturday. Then I think we got to bed almost like maybe 3 o'clock in the morning. And then somehow I had my clock set and alarm set, and somehow I had it set for 8:20, and Lauren somehow woke up at 8:15 and just kind of nudged me and said, "Are you going to watch the Browns game?" And I woke up and I was like, I thought I'd overslept or something. You know, you ever wake up like after deep sleep, you don't even know who you are, much less where you are or what time it is. And so suddenly I woke up. And I just stayed in bed. But then the Browns game started, and I watched the entire Browns game in bed. And it was like the worst experience ever. That just started off what turned out to be just a crappy day until, and I haven't had a chance to tell you this, until. And I just felt bad all day from getting no sleep that night before or whatever, and just kind of then watching that downer of a Browns game where they just mistake after mistake after mistake. These guys, I mean, you know, the fumbles and it's just sad. I don't know how these guys are still on a team when they just keep making mistakes like that. Something really needs to be done. But anyway, that set the pace for the day until finally at 7:45 in the evening, we had our softball city tournament. It started last Sunday, and this is the first time. I mean, I've played softball for 40 years. We play in the spring league, summer league, and then we play in the fall league. And this was the end of our fall league, the fall tournament. And so never have our games been on Sundays. But this year, our tournament was scheduled for Sundays. So we played last Sunday, and we won. And then we had to play this Sunday at 7:45, and then if you won, you played the championship game at 8:45. So it had been narrowed down to 4 teams. So we went out there at 7:45. It's 39 degrees, freezing freaking cold, and going out to play 2 softball games. And I just felt, I don't know why, I had such a bad feeling from the Browns game. I said, man, this is going to just be one of the worst days ever to get knocked out of the tournament, the way the Browns lost today. And I just feel yucky after getting no sleep last night. Anyway, we went out. We won the first game 14-5, run rule the other team. And then, and it was, like I said, it was getting colder by the minute. Then we played back-to-back. Then we came in and played the championship game. And we won 22-4.
Wow.
I know. So we at the end of the night where they're passing out, they had these, city champion. I'm going to tweet out my championship a picture of my championship team and a picture of us all wearing our city championship shirts that we got awarded after the game, and it was really, really cool. So that saved my Sunday after the bad start from the Cleveland Browns.
Well, Jerry, this coming month is your birthday month.
Yep.
Now, you don't play in the senior softball league, do you yet? No? Or is that just
No, heck no. I tried that. They do have a senior league that's like for 50 and over. And they taught me into playing in that one time, and I hated it. A bunch of old guys stumbling around out there and all this stuff. And I said, yeah. No. So anyway, I went back, and I've always played in the competitive. We have a A, B, and C league. My team always plays in the in the A League, and here we go. We won the, and it's so nice to beat a bunch of young kids, bunch of young guys. And I don't know. I mean, I really raised the median age. I got some young guys on my team too, but I got 4 guys out of the 10 that have been playing with me for years. Ricky Grisham's been playing with me every year for like 20 years. And so some of our guys, me especially, got a little age on us, but then I kind of rounded out with some younger guys. So we did really well. I mean, it was really fun game, fun night.
If I lived down here in Memphis, King, I would definitely be on your team.
I don't know, Glenn.
What do you listen? I have the most home runs in my high school for baseball. Most career home run. I still have the record after 16 years. The record is still mine, King. So,
oh, okay. Well, then you probably could be on the team. You're right.
Yeah, I was star first baseman for the Aurora.
Hey, I'm
Arena.
first baseman.
Well, King, you're gonna be on the bench, buddy.
Oh my goodness, really?
I'm just kidding. All right, we'll get to people going out trick or treating. Be safe on Halloween. We really appreciate you guys listening to this episode of Dinner with the King. Any final thoughts, Jerry?
Well, I'm just going to say, I'm going to go back now and look for some of this footage of the different monsters. I'm going to make sure we include that in some of the upcoming TV shows. That I want to remind everybody, starting Saturday, November the 9th. Let's see. Wait a minute. Episode 1 is, Saturday, November 11th.
Yeah.
I've been saying the wrong date. Saturday, November 11th at 8 p.m., Jerry Lawler's Classic Memphis Wrestling. We're going to return with us to the thrilling days of yesteryear, and we're going to go back and watch a lot of these old matches that you and I have been talking about every week here on the podcast. And it's going to be every week on Channel 30, WLMT here in Memphis. And you can see some of the classic Memphis wrestling shows ever. And we've already got the first one in the can. It's me and Bill Dundee, and we go back and look at the Tupelo concession stand battle that he and I were in. And then we show 2 more matches of Bill and I against each other. And one of them was a loser leave town match, and one of them was a match in which Bill's hair and his wife's hair was at stake. If they lost, they both got their head shaved. And sitting at ringside, you got to see this, and it's amazing. Sitting at ringside, flanking her so that she's like they're her bodyguards, are Sting and the Ultimate Warrior.
Wow.
When they were first in Memphis at the Blade Runners. So Steve Borden and Jim Hellwig were there as, they'd wrestled earlier in the night, and they were sitting there next to Beverly Dundee as she watched the match, worrying about whether she's going to get her head shaved or not.
Unbelievable. So
Yeah.
make sure to check that out. I know a lot of people are wondering if it's going to be online. So hopefully these episodes can be online for all the viewers outside of Memphis too.
Yeah, that's definitely in the plans. That's definitely in the works.
Awesome. All right, King. Hope you enjoy your Halloween, Mr. Lawler, if you're going as King tonight. I'm sure a lot of kids come to your house for trick-or-treating.
Well, they do. One year,
up?
we've done some different things over the years. I still have my whole collection of masks right in there, sitting in front of the Batmobile. One year we parked the Batmobile outside, and we dressed up as Batman, and Lauren was Batgirl, and Peyton was Robin, and all that sort of stuff. And we stood outside and passed out, and then that did attract quite a crowd. But I don't think we're going to do that this year. But I don't know. We'll probably. I think I want to try to get Lauren to put the old Dolly Parton outfit on one more time. That was enjoyable.
I think there's enjoyable is.
What?
Hey, keep it PG here. I'm sure there's a reason why you want to put the Dolly.
It's enjoyable to see her dressed and looking all pretty as Dolly Parton.
I'm sure it was enjoyable for you later in the night too.
Come on, keep it PG.
All right, we'll talk to you guys next week for the first episode of the month of November. It's the King's birthday month. Hey, the birthday boy.
Hey, and next week, remind me, I want to talk a little bit about the session that I did, the voiceover session for the new video game that's coming out.
What?
Yeah, I can't divulge all that today on today's show.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about that.
Yeah,
a little
the 2-hour voiceover. It's a new video game it's a mobile game.
Wow. Okay. Well,
I mean, it is awesome. I'm telling you, I had a chance to look at the graphics and everything of what it looks like, and it is really good.
but you're not on the commentary team, though. I mean, why would they have you on
Well,
voiceover?
I'm on the commentary of this game because it's like that's the way they explained it. We want it to sound like the Attitude Era, and so that's the way I did all the commentary, real over the top. And
So was it you and JR?
well, I don't know if they're gonna use JR or who else they're gonna use. I just know that I did a 2-hour session and did almost over 300 lines for it the other day, and they're going to have me back and do some more. But that's what I'm going to try to find out by next week. All the details on the game and when it's going to come out and be available and all this stuff. But it is going to be really neat.
Really quick, are you going to be in WWE 2K18? Do we know an update on that yet?
I haven't heard anything yet.
Unbelievable. Brutus the Barber Beefcake is in it, but not Jerry Lawler. Unbelievable. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week.
All right, Glenn. See you. Hey, Glenn, it's something that I just want to kind of throw in here for just a second. I think that this is, to me, it's really important. I mean, you've heard me read ads for brands like Casper Mattresses and Dollar Shave Club, which, they're all amazing companies that I truly believe in. And these ads are great because they keep the show free. And, it's not something that you have to pay money to subscribe to. And they introduce listeners like you that are listening out there right now to new products and services that I guarantee you'll love. So it turns out to be like a win for everyone. And I'm happy to have the help and expertise, mind you, of Midroll Media to ensure that this show continues to have great advertisers. Now, here's how you can help us. If you out there listening are interested in advertising on our show, do this right now. Go to Midroll, that's Midroll, midroll.com/dinner, and click contact to let the folks at Midroll know that you'd like to advertise. And they also represent other great shows like, well, Glenn, what's some of the ones that Midroll represent?
Well, Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, Colt Cabana, his wrestling podcast. So there are a couple of wrestling podcasts that use Midroll for advertising. Yeah,
that way, you can reach an array of engaged listeners. So once again, let me remind you, that's Midroll, midroll.com/dinner. Go there and check them out and click on contact, and you'll really help us out here, and we'll be able to keep this podcast free where you don't have to pay to subscribe to it or anything like that. And plus, you'll be hearing about some great, or be an opportunity to do some great sponsorship on the show.
The preceding show is a Pod Avenue production.